Hello, welcome to another episode of History in the Dark. I am your host, Darkness the Curse. And before we begin, as always, thank you so much to my generous patrons, my British rail critics, and of course my underwater train finders. You are the reason why this content remains good. Oh, a sweet reprieve from my endless suffering. I get to talk about good things. These are 5 of the best trains ever. Part 9! The DB Class 120. This is a class of electric locomotives that was operated by DB Fernwerke in Germany, though the initial prototypes were delivered in 1979, known as Mark 120.0. And these were one of the first electric locomotives with 3-phase motors that was controlled by thyristor-based power electronics. Thyristor is a word I'm probably mispronouncing, but it's a solid-state semiconductor device with 4 layers of alternating P and N-type materials, used for high-power applications. That may not have explained anything, and I get that, because you probably need to be an electrician to understand that. But the point is they were very innovative. And that principle, that was mainly devised by the German branch of Swiss-based Braun, Boveri, and C, laid the foundation for all current electric and diesel-electric rail engines. So you're actually looking at probably one of the most influential locomotives in history, purely because it's often considered a milestone in locomotive technology. They were based off experiments from the 70s, but these were the actual completed versions. It was meant to be the first truly universal locomotive, which is a really tall order generally. You can make a really good freight locomotive that's really bad with passengers, or a really good passenger locomotive that cannot haul a freight train to save its life. Doing both? Well, it doesn't always happen. Some locomotives we've talked about before have been able to do both pretty well, but that's generally accidentally. This was built this way from the ground up, and the electrical components actually exceeded their expectations. They weren't perfect, because the mechanical parts actually suffered due to the lightweight construction, but over time these issues were resolved, and the actual production line, Mark 120.1, was ordered in 1984 and delivered between 86 and 88. They originally wanted to build up to 2,000 of these machines, but those plans were, well, put on hold. And that never happened. They only built 65, but they were genuinely good. Many locomotives after this one featured technologies from the 120, but weren't necessarily considered successors to it. In fact, they formed the foundation for the power cars of the German high-speed trains, the ICE-1 and the 2. So, yeah, these were really good electric locomotives, and they lasted in service for several decades. They started being withdrawn in 2011. And to date, almost all of them are out of service except for one from the 120.2 sub-series that is apparently still trucking around over there. But soon she too will likely be withdrawn, but that's a heck of a run and a solid influence on locomotive manufacturing. The JNR Class C62. What's this? A Japanese steam locomotive, and a good one. Interesting, and this actually is Japanese. This was not an import. These locomotives were 464s, designed by Hideo Shima, and built by Japanese National Railways. These were the largest and fastest steam passenger locomotives that ran in Japan, and 49 were constructed from 1948 to 1949. One of them, C6217, broke the speed record for narrow-gauge steam locomotives on the 15th of December 1954, when she reached 129 kilometers an hour, 80 miles per hour. Not that impressive for a larger locomotive, but for narrow-gauge, that was pretty fast. They also achieved a significant level of fame beyond rail fans, due to their role in the Japanese manga anime series Galaxy Express 999, but that's another story entirely that we don't get into on this particular channel. They were retired between 1971 and 1973, and 5 are currently in preservation over in Japan, with one, C62-2, actually in running condition, so full marks all around. The FS Class E.428. Up. We're back to Italy again, and yes, I did not forget about you guys. I'm still gonna talk about good things from Italy. I'm sorry, okay? These Italian Railways electric locomotives were introduced in the 1930s for fast services on the Florence-Rome Railway, and weren't withdrawn until the 1980s. For the time, they were actually really impressive. They were huge, for one thing, as well as powerful and fast. They were 4 meters longer than the preceding E.626, and like them, these were direct current locomotives. DC, not alternating current, AC. Now that did require a different set of infrastructure, and most would consider AC to be the superior choice for many applications, but the locomotives were still really good. They were, in fact, so good and useful that even after World War II, when a ton of them were horribly damaged, all but 2 of them were repaired and rebuilt to be put back into service, and they continued on for several decades until the last was withdrawn in 1988. The Great Western Railway 5700 class. Wait a minute. That looks really familiar. It's Duck! And Duck is actually, well, a much better tank engine than Thomas was in real life. The 5700s are actually debatably one of the best tank engines that the UK ever produced. Period, end of story. They were really, really good. They were 060 Pannier tank steam locomotives. They were in fact the most prolific class of the Great Western Railway, and one of the most numerous classes of British steam locomotives in general. They built 863 of these things, which is just nuts, but they were so good at what they were for, and then some. They were originally supposed to be for light goods and shunting, but they were also used for passenger work on branch lines, suburban, and shorter main line journeys, because, well, they could do it. They were originally designed by Charles Colette, and the first were constructed in 1929. From then on, they continued being just awesome, just in every conceivable way. And of course, they continued chuffing on right into the days of British Rail. But British Railways actually continued building this design, at least for another year. They stopped in 1950, but still, that was incredibly impressive. But of course, with the advent of the modernization plan, they had to get rid of all the steam locomotives, and that included the 5700s. They started being withdrawn in 1956, with the final one leaving service in 1966. But some weren't actually out of service even after that. 19 were sold for further use after being withdrawn. The National Coal Board, for example, bought 5, and 1 was bought by PD Fuels, and 13 were bought by London Transport. That's how good these things were. The smaller companies still wanted them. They were nearly 50 years old, and yet they still wanted to use them. And they continued using them for a little bit longer. Despite so many being built, the vast majority were scrapped. 16 of this class have been preserved. So hats off to Duck for showing everyone how to do it the Great Western way, and not the wrong way. The Eritrean Railway 442 series. Eritrean Railway? The heck is an Eritrean? Well, the Eritrean Railway is the only railway system in Eritrea. Eritrea, officially the state of Eritrea, is a country in the Horn of Africa region of Eastern Africa. And their railway is very unique because, well, they still use steam locomotives out there on their narrow gauge trackage. And one of the types of locomotives they use are the 442s. These locomotives were built by Ansando in Genova in 1938, and they are compound Malay locomotives. 4 of these locomotives actually still exist, and 3 of them are in running order and are still used in active service now. They are the prime mainline steam locomotives of the railway, and are in high demand for both cargo and their tourist services, which they do offer. 2 of them, double-headed, are required to scale the steepest grades with a train of any length, because of how insane this railway is. And despite being compound Malays, they are tank engines, with very large side tanks and a rear coal bunker. but 1938, and they're still in active service on an actual railway. That's impressive. Part of it is, of course, likely due to the region in general and the railway just not dieselizing, but hey, they're still using steam out there, and the 442s are the principal example of it. So hey, Eritrea, I might want to visit, just because these things sound really awesome. And with that, a special thank you to all my underwater train finders. Some Dude 267, Orange Glass, Royal Hudson 2860, Benjamin Owens, Panzer Kitson 131-232, Josh Johnson, Metal for Life Guy, Anzac A1, Arthur Roy, Tommy Rossini, Lord Captain Von Thrust III, Joshua Long, Brian, Jack Carson's Railroad Videos, Hayden DeGrow, Master of None, Dr. Racer 78, Lord Hog 444, Alaric Jaspers, the Baxter, that guy with a beard, Mark Holding, Lock Kraken, Crystal Morgan, A Person 723, and DM Tribal Typhoon. Till next time, this is Darkness, to be well fond, farewell.